Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Rochester. For more than 150 years, ours has been a congregation of open minds and loving hearts, celebrating many sources of wisdom, many spiritual paths, many identities. Your faith, your doubts, your questions, your hopes for our world are welcome here. Our doors are closed because our hearts continue to be open, living our values of care and compassion for each other and our community. You can join us online every Sunday right here. Also, Sunday coffee hour following the service online, or small groups, including Chalice circles or a book series on racial justice. Kids can sign up for monthly spirit kits. Find all of these opportunities and ways to sign up and get involved in your weekly e-news or contact the church. And every week, join us online for our Walden Hill Wednesday Forum. This week is a climate justice forum with two very special guests, Anna Ritchie of Conservation Minnesota and Rick Morris of the Sierra Club. Come for a conversation about the political and moral work to live in right relationship with our planet and how you can get involved right now in the social and political climate. Join us online at 6:30 this Wednesday night. And now is your last chance to submit donations to support the church through our annual auction. Online bidding will occur later this month. Information will still be shared in your e-news about that, with a live event on Friday, October 30th. You can submit your donations now, including creative ideas listed online like baking items or outdoor events and more. We need your support to keep our church vibrant and thriving. Thank you for your generosity if you've donated or you still can, and join us on October 30th for a wonderful live event. Find all the details in your weekly e-news or contact the church. Today's entire offering will go to support Family Promise, a Rochester interfaith initiative providing shelter and meals and comprehensive care for families experiencing homelessness. Our church has partnered with them now for many years. You can give at uurochmn.org/give. And today we welcome special guests who have come to our church almost every year for the last several years, and they'll come to us virtually this year. Larry McDonough and Richard Terrill. Larry is a composer, pianist, singer, teacher, a Minnesota Rock Country Hall of Fame member, and a recipient of the American Composers Forum Showcase Award. He also works in law to help coordinate eviction defense. And Richard plays saxophone and is a poet and a retired English professor from Minnesota State University in Mankato. He received the Minnesota Book Award for Poetry and has released a new book, What Falls Away Is Always, which just came out in September. We are grateful for this special service today from Larry and Richard of music and poetry and reflection on the sources of our tradition. And finally, in the words of the Reverend Eliza Tupper Wilkes, minister of this church in the 1870s, may our faith in humanity and our message of hope and good cheer light our way. It's good to be together.
This is the Unitarian Universalist Church. This is the church of the Flaming Chalice. This is the church of the open mind. This is the church of the loving heart, where friends come together and share.
Good morning. UUs describe their guiding principles as a living tradition of wisdom and spirituality drawn from sources as diverse as science, poetry, scripture, and personal experience. That's from the UU website. I take this to mean that the individual, possibly in fellowship, is to embark on a free and responsible search for truth and meaning in the words of the fourth UU principle, with these sources as a guide. This free and responsible element is the thing that drew me most strongly to UUism, and perhaps that's true for some of you. What Larry and I hope to illustrate for you today is how the creative process for us often involves a similar borrowing. From a variety of sources, we try to make something that is original. In doing so, we respect these sources, pay homage to them, meditate upon them. We borrow them carefully, and like a rare book checked out from a library, we return them unblemished, carefully. The result for us, as in UUism, is, if we're lucky, a direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder, the first source of wisdom and spirituality for UUs. I think that's what a lot of art aims to do, isn't it? For both the creator and the audience, through comedy or tragedy, movement, image, or song, to transcend our daily lives, even as it teaches us something about those lives. What we'd like to do today then is show you how material that we've borrowed has gone into our poems, musical compositions, and arrangements. I'll be reading today poems from my new book, What Falls Away Is Always, Poems and Conversations. It's available at holycowpress.org. A lot of poems in the book borrow a line from another source as the title of my poem. And the first poem I'd like to read takes as its title, and also its last line, words from Walt Whitman. I think you'll recognize the Whitman line that is the title here. Whitman, of course, is a great spiritual teacher and a favorite of the Transcendentalists in the mid-19th century, and they were often Unitarians, as we know. So the line I'm borrowing from Whitman, which is my title, I think I could turn and live with animals. Life is good, I tell my little dog, and give him his pill for pain and his pill for the swelling in his spine, and the one to relax the muscles, which are tense, I suppose, from not knowing when the pain will come again. I give him the pill for the blood in his stool, that one of the other pills causes, we don't know which. So he will feel fine the next morning, and remember, I'm not sure what or how much, but will want to go for the longer walk that he would later regret if I let him walk longer, and if he were able to regret any joy and the moments and the fine air and the messages it carries. Life is good, I tell my little dog, and I believe in the moment he hears and obeys. So placid and self-contained, I look at him long and long.
My arrangement of the Star-Spangled Banner comes from several sources. I wanted to make the tune a little less bombastic and march-like as it's often performed. So I thought about scoring it as a ballad, taking it from the traditional 3/4 time and putting it into 4/4 time. So when I thought about ballads, I thought first about Gershwin, and to take a Gershwin kind of harmonic structure to the tune that uses things like a descending bass line. I also decided to mix some other pieces in for introduction and for the conclusion. So the introduction comes from the Battle Hymn of the Republic, and the ending of the piece comes from America the Beautiful.
When people ask us about our Unitarian Universalist faith, we often say it's our 7 principles that help guide us. What we don't always reference, and I think frequently forget about, is how our 6 sources also help guide us through our lives and guide us into the future as we learn more things about what is happening in the world and how we got to be where we are today. So today's Time for All Ages, a little introduction to those 6 sources. Unitarian Universalism 6 sources. Kid version. Just as currently spoken languages are always changing, our religion is a living tradition, continually drawing on new knowledge and inspiration to guide us through our lives. Here are our 7 principles, again in kid version, which most of us are fairly familiar with. But today, we are going to concentrate on our 6 sources. Imagine yourself in a library. Shelves upon shelves of books, but they are organized in a way you haven't ever seen before. They are organized by our sources. Our first source, A Sense of Wonder, is a completely unique section in this library. Unique because you have never seen anything like it before, at least not in a library. This section is full of feelings, memories, and experiences. All of your feelings, memories, and experiences. Because you know what? This is your library. In my library, I have my feelings, memories, and experiences. And because we are always growing and learning and trying new things, this part of our library is always changing and expanding. Good thing this part of our library is in our minds. We would totally run out of space. Our second source takes up the second section of our library. People from long ago and today whose lives remind us to be kind and fair. This is more like a regular library to us, but there's definitely a mixture of stories. There are memoirs and autobiographies. There are encyclopedias about women and men and the great things they've done. There's detailed biographies spanning lifetimes. Some of these stories are about people who have been gone for many, many years. But many stories in here are from people around you today. Parents, friends, teachers, community leaders. Some of them are well known past our city and state, and others are only known by a few close friends. But they all have influence on who we are. Our third source, Ethical and Spiritual Wisdom of the World's Religion. Here is where you find religious texts and the rituals and practices of many, many faiths. Here is where you will find information about religions you've never even heard of before. But the important thing to recognize is that all of these are ways that we can draw on other religions to help us learn and understand about our own Unitarian Universalism. As you enter the fourth section, about our fourth source, you will find shelves and shelves about Jewish and Christian texts. It may seem a little odd to have this separate from world religions, but Unitarian Universalism has a direct connection to these two faiths, making it important to give them a section all their own. Here we find the Hebrew and Christian writings that make up the Bible. It's full of many, many parables, stories, and allegories with unforgettable characters, rich imagery written by many different rabbis, nuns, and other religious leaders of the time. It is from these teachings where we are taught to love all as we love ourselves. Our fifth source looks very much like a regular library as well. It's overflowing with books and materials about science and humanism. Every day, scientists are learning more and more about how the world works and how we got to where we are now as living beings. Here, we find information about society and ethics, as well as biology and chemistry. And there's just so much here. This section has things to touch like dinosaur bones and scientific instruments to explore and examine our universe. The last set of shelves is filled with books that teach us about the earth. We find indigenous teachings, along with pagan and other earth-based religions, books that study the natural rhythms in our lives, and texts about the miracle of life. We find science books on these shelves too, covering the animal world, sexuality education, climate change, and other fields. Off to one side, picture lush gardens and miniature habitats of all kinds, since observation is one of our best ways to learn about nature. I am so glad that we had the opportunity to learn a little bit more about these 6 sources. So in this month of deep listening, it is important to look back on how we got to where we are right now with our Unitarian Universalist faith and all of the different things that keep shaping us every day into what we will be tomorrow.
This next poem borrows the tone and concerns of contemporary poet W.S. Merwin, who's just passed away a couple of years ago. His writing was often environmentally conscious, especially later in his career about his adoptive home of Hawaii. The poem also borrows its form. It borrows the form of a letter. I think letters allow us to be more direct and honest than we sometimes are when we're just speaking, and certainly more so than we're writing an email. This is especially true, I think, in a letter to someone we've never met. This poem is a letter to the future about our current environmental crises. Dear future, what you think of us will not be your first concern, just as you were not ours. You won't know we thought our diligence would be your salvation, that we looked out at the trees and they just stood there. We each cast a single shadow, longer at twilight, yes, but soon we couldn't recognize darkness. Each pin in the map stood for 10,000, and there were tens of thousands of pins. So we made more maps, but found the world wouldn't grow. Future, we knew so much for sure, there wasn't room for it all. Each mind was like a garage, so stuffed with belongings that cars had to park on the streets. Soon, there was simply not enough dignity to go around, or fresh water, which became the same thing. The very air was like bird song we thought we could identify, but the birds knew it not at all, so didn't sing. They couldn't fly any further south than this. We thought we could change the subject, that there were kingdoms yet to come. We held truth to be self-evident, but it proved to be disguised, difficult to tease out from our habits and necessities, which became an embarrassment of exceptions. The moon itself could be populated, couldn't it? The stars bore out our cold abstractions. Down the pipe, always another pagan invention. Each meadow, a place on which nothing was built yet. People grew sadder for what seemed like a long time, and then they got mad. Future, perhaps you know. They had come to believe in pure mind until matter put a cruel end to that short semester. They never thought that if the wolves roamed too close to the door, their houses had been built too close to the forest. Future, you became our article of faith, a proper name legally changed to rhyme with ours. If tomorrow, as I write, is the beginning of you, the atoms of the days and years between us may change slowly enough, like failing light, that you will even think you remember gardens.
We Shall Overcome comes from many sources. It's based on the piece I'll Overcome Someday by Charles Albert Tinley, written in the late 1800s and published in 1901. It was very popular in the black churches of the South. The composers of We Shall Overcome based their lyrics on those of Tinley, but they were different. The first half of the melody of We Shall Overcome is from O Sanctissima, a Roman Catholic hymn in Latin, first published in 1792. The second half is from the 19th century hymn, I'll Be All Right. What I did with it is I incorporated some jazz harmonies reminiscent of the pianist Bill Evans.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome. someday. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday.
Good morning. It is good to be with you. We are separated by space and time, but we are still together, and we gather in a virtual way as we continue to create a place of communal caring and connection. Be enriched by the virtual presence of each other and draw yourself into the heart of love at this time of service and reflection. In this time together, we ask that our minds be open, our hearts welcoming, our arms embracing. We honor all who support us in this caring, loving, and all-inclusive ministry. We send gratitude to Janet Breitenbach, serving as our caring coordinator, arranging care for our members and friends in need. The members of our caring committee are wonderful examples of our compassionate community, holding us up as we go through challenging times. And as we continue through this time of staying at home, many of us may need additional care, whether it be personal pastoral care, grocery delivery, or an errand run. And I encourage you to reach out to Reverend Luke or myself with that request. We thank all of you who have served our congregation in this way over the last few months. In this community, we make time each week to share pieces of our lives with one another. We do this because each person here has value. Each person's experience matters. We lift up those whose lives are touched by sadness, by illness, by worry, or by loneliness. We revel in those who are celebrating joys in their lives. May their happiness lift us all. May all of us find comfort, hope, joy, and healing strength in this community. We hold in our hearts Dottie Johnson and her family. Dottie's father, Merton Meineke, 96 years old, living in Austin, Minnesota, passed away from COVID-19. Sadly, he was not able to be with any of his 10 children or 44 grandchildren at the time of his passing due to quarantined situations in his long-term living community. Dottie shares gratitude to the hard work and caring staff who were there to provide the comfort and care that they could not. This virus does not only affect the old, as Dottie's 13-year-old grandson has also tested positive for COVID-19. We send strength to this family, hopes for good health, and the hope that memories of a wonderful father and grandfather comfort all who knew him. And we hold Kay Eberman in our thoughts as she recovers from knee replacement surgery last week. Kay will be recovering at a rehabilitation center, and we send her well wishes for a very speedy recovery. As we have over these last few months, we need to continue to reach out to all in our community to let them know we are still here and still holding and supporting them. We encourage you all to send cards and make calls to those you love and support your local businesses, opening the doors of communication and community. May the faith in the spirit of life, love for the community of earth, and love for the light in each other be ours now and in all the days to come.
Take a moment, take a pause, take a breath, breathe deep the breath of life. Remember how precious that is right now. Find a moment to be calm and centered down. Feel below you the earth with its ancient turning. Feel above you the sky and the stars with their ancient light holding you here in this moment, this breath right now. May you know in this house you are held and you are named and known as beloved, as sacred through the distance in these tender days. I invite you to join me in a time of meditation, a time of prayer, first by sharing silence together. Spirit of life and source of love, God of 1,000 names and beyond all naming. Sometimes it's hard to remember what we source our hope from, or what sources we draw from again and again to find love or grace or possibility. What sources inspire us to create or to act, to speak, to vote? What sources do we find wisdom in? Sources of compassion? What sources do we turn to when our heart, our world seems to shatter apart? What sources soothe our weary soul and piece it back together with gentleness, resilience, with love? May you find these sources in ancient scripture or modern poetry, in the changing fall colors or the kindness of a friend, in the blue sky and fading light that helps us notice the stars, in art, in music, in nature, in friendship. May our sources, whatever they be, modern or ancient, with our neighbor or with our ancestors, may they help hold us steady in this shifting world. We hold all those who suffer in mind, in body, or spirit. I invite you to bring the names that you're holding in your own heart this day, in joy or in sorrow, celebration or concern, and silently or aloud now in this sacred hour to speak their names. For all those names and many more, spoken, unspoken, may we be forever grateful for the fabric of love and of life that weaves us together. May those threads hold us in love and in strength. These words of meditation are from William Stafford, entitled, Yes. It could happen any time. Tornado, earthquake, Armageddon, it could happen. Or sunshine, love, salvation. It could, you know. That's why we make no guarantees in this life. That's why we wake and we look out. There's some bonuses. like morning, like right now, like noon, like evening. Amen.
In this poem, I'm borrowing from myself, borrowing lines from early poems, usually poems that I wrote as a young man. I think it's a poem about gaining wisdom with age, or trying to, or hoping to, getting a perspective on our personal past. Early poems. The images are like old friends I no longer have much in common with. Three sweatered like a crusted pine, the fisherman scent of imagined waves. He shakes his cock like a tired flag. I pretend I wouldn't recognize them on a dark street, even with a gang of marching nationalist editors gaining on me from behind, red pencils sharpened to pin accuracy. And it was always night in these young poems. Night is evening's secret, a myth about a night world. We wait for night and night feeding bass, as if daylight were owned by prose, and of little interest, mostly because there was no bourbon in it. And what did the young man know about love? Too simple for listeners, too difficult for art, that now he wouldn't cut back until the part about how hard it is was left to extend its bare branch into the winter sky.
Tango para Maria Luiza is a special piece for me. It's dedicated to my Aunt Mary Lou, the other professional pianist in the family. As her time was near, she asked if I would play at her funeral. I'd planned to play something classical, but as I was driving back from Iowa, this piece came into my head. It was a tango, and I pulled over on the side of the road so I could write it down because I was worried I would forget it. I think what inspired the piece is I'd been listening to tangos on the radio, and there was a piece by the flute player Doug Little that I liked a lot. So in part, that's the source for this. But the other interesting thing about this piece is it ended up in 9/4 time. 9/4 time is divided in this piece 4 into 5, and this is the bass line that repeats throughout the piece. I hope you like it.
I wanted to include one lighter poem, and since the Twins this season, as some of you know if you follow baseball, are playing before an empty house, this poem that I wrote several years ago seems very timely. The line that I borrow from my title is from the baseball pitcher Dizzy Dean. And if you're about my age, you remember that Dizzy Dean was the broadcaster of the Saturday game of the week on CBS back in the late 50s and 60s. Dizzy Dean was famous for fracturing the English language, and his broadcasting was maybe at least as entertaining as the baseball. Any spiritual element in this poem is accidental, I think. And here's the line I borrowed from Dizzy Dean. Fans, don't fail to miss tomorrow's game. He said that at the end of a broadcast. Otherwise, you may be in the stands alone, since this broadcast reaches a wide audience. If tomorrow comes as scheduled, no athletes will leave their caps on during an anthem that won't be played. The flag that won't be flying may lack both stars and stripes. It will be the opposite of extra innings, less than rain shortened. No zeros will be affixed to the center field scoreboard above the green ivy that will still grow in lovely entanglement with the afternoon sun. No promotions, no giveaways, but the overpriced hot dogs will be as good as free if you can find a vendor. The beer would flow past the 7th inning curfew if your thirst for it hadn't stayed away like everyone else who listened to this broadcast, which reached a wide audience. Baseball, so much like life, bench warming at the end of the dugout, stealing signs, left stranded in scoring position, sacrifice, optioned to AAA, long periods of inaction broken by drama that's usually unproductive. Baseball, so much like life, that for tomorrow's game, you even know the final score.
Sirocco is a Mediterranean wind that blows across the Sahara and can reach hurricane strength. Often after the winds, there's a lack of wind and very peaceful times. So I decided to write a piece that captured both of those sensations. I took the bass line from the Chick Corea piece, Sea Journey, and modified it. Here's the Sea Journey bass line. Since the Sirocco winds are in the Middle East and in the desert, I decided to use a time signature more typical for that place. So I put it in 7/4, so I needed to change the bass line to fit that. So the bass line's in 7/4, but each repetition of the bass line takes up half a bar, so those are actually in 7/8. To continue kind of the structure, I created a piece in 7-bar phrases with an intense portion based on that bass line and then a quieter portion in the middle to get the difference between the Sirocco winds and the quiet times.
as you consider what sources you find love from, what sources you find compassion from, what sources you find inspiration and hope and resilience and strength from. May this song that we will sing together again someday hold you. In my soul, the sun is shining. In my blood, the rolling sea. In my breath, the air of mountains. In my body, Mother Earth. Amen.